My name is Tara. I decided to do my own podcast dedicated to spirituality. Among that will be near death experiences, out of body experiences, whatever I find moving and interesting in some form. Aaron Green has quite a story that really inspired me, and it just helped me a great deal by listening to it. I myself have had my own out of body experience. I just wanted to bring to you some guests. I'm starting with Aaron Green because his story is, as I said, very, very inspiring. And so I'm going to turn it to him now. Go ahead, Aaron.
All
Please
right.
share with us your
Thanks,
story.
Tara. Yeah, so my experience started when I was a kid. I was about shortly before my sixth birthday. I was playing with some friends in the neighbor's backyard, and we were just playing, just doing normal things that kids do. And something happened where I couldn't breathe. I don't quite know what happened, but I just could not breathe no matter what I did. So I started to walk away from my friends. I was trying to go home to get some help. And I only got about 20 feet away, something like that, and my consciousness left my body. Like this breathing problem triggered the release of the real me, my soul or my consciousness, whatever you want to call it. It came out of my body, and I watched as my body fell to the ground. Like I could see my body fall. And I was just kind of floating there next to my body, and I looked over at my friends, and they didn't notice anything had happened to me. They were still doing whatever they were doing. And it had seemed very important. This breathing problem, my friends, my life, it all seemed really important. But then when I left my body, it kind of seemed trivial. It seemed like it wasn't important at all. Um, and a couple things happened very quickly. One is my entire life replayed very quickly from birth up until that moment, like in extreme detail. And the interesting thing is, not only did I re-experience what I had been through, but I could feel, my thoughts, my feelings, but I could also feel my parents' thoughts and feelings and how I had affected them. Like I could literally feel how they had felt. And a couple things really stood out. One was by my mother's love. She was a loving mother, and that really stood out. I could really feel that. And then what stood out for my father, he loved me, he was a good father, but his anger and frustration, especially when I was really little, with the screaming and crying and the diapers, like that really stood out. Um, anyway, that ended very quickly, and then I noticed a light in the distance. It was kind of like a pinpoint of light, but somehow I knew it was very important. Um, it was kind of like I instinctively knew there was an importance to this light, but I didn't understand it. I didn't continue to think about it. I just went back to floating around in my neighbor's backyard trying to understand what was going on. So I started to have questions, and as I would have questions, it's like a detailed answer would come to me, and I would get my questions answered in extreme clarity. And one of my first questions was, what am I? I knew I wasn't this body. I knew I was something different. It was just fundamentally obvious. And it was kind of like I could see myself. It's like I was able to take a look at myself. And in that moment, I was just like a round orb of faint light, kind of like a bubble, or I kind of thought of it like an egg. Uh, as a kid, it kind of reminded me of an egg, but it was just like a faint round orb of light. It's just that's how I existed like that, and it was very comfortable. I was happy to be like that. It was better than being in the body I was in. As a 6 year old, it was a healthy body and everything, but it was like it was pleasant to leave. It was better to be outside of the body. Anyway, I had another question. I wanted to know, well, what am I doing here? Like where did I come from and why am I here? Um, and so this memory, it's something I had previously experienced in the spiritual realms. This memory was like showed to me, something I had done before. So this is like a long time ago. Um, I had been one of these orbs, this round orb of consciousness, and I was with hundreds or thousands of other orbs of consciousness, and we were all together in like what I call a sea of light. We all existed together. We were happy, we were content, but we were ignorant. We didn't know anything. There was no problems, and there could never be any problems. We were just we just existed like that, and everything was pleasant. It was nice. It was very, very bright. There was light everywhere. Um, and we would get these gifts periodically. One gift would come down for every soul that was in this group, and it was something that made us happy. Um, I, I kind of thought of it like a cookie. As a kid, it reminded me of what it was like to get a cookie. It's something that's nice to have, but you don't need it. Um, anyway, one time there was one fewer of these treats that came down to all these souls, and there were souls in the group, and everyone knew that. Somehow we just instinctively we just it was obvious. And I made the conscious decision, okay, everyone else wants this treat. I want it too, but there's not enough. So I'm just going to give up mine so that everyone else can have one. And when the last treat came to the last other soul, I was very gently lifted up out of this group, and I was contacted with like a mind-to-mind communication, um, by a very powerful entity that said essentially, and this is a telepathic conversation. It was like mind to mind. Um, Basically, he said to me, "I'm your creator, and what you did when you gave up what you wanted to help those around you, that's very important, and it indicates that you're ready, like you're ready to begin something." And for simplicity, I'll just call my creator God. But God told me that I was very much loved, and I was very important. And when I say that, I mean not just me, but all of these souls. We were all very much loved and important, and that God had a very wonderful existence in store for us. Like existing was just a really fantastic thing. It was going to be absolutely terrific. But we were ignorant, and we needed to learn. And in order to really enjoy and appreciate what God had in store for us, we needed to go through an education that would prepare us. And this is what God explained to me. And the way He explained it was that God is loving, compassionate, kind, honest, forgiving, uh, all these positive traits. Like that's what God is. And in order for us to fully enjoy our existence, we need to freely adopt those same traits. We need to freely choose to be kind, compassionate, honest, act with integrity, be generous, that sort of thing. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But can't you just change me? Can you just make me like that? Why would I need to go through some kind of education? Can you just change me and make me like that? And so God's answer was that absolutely he was capable of changing me any way he might want. He was capable of changing all these other souls, but we were created with free will, and free will was very important to God. And that if God made us like completely developed, or if he forcibly changed us, it would violate our free will, and it would it's kind of like it would negate the entire reason we were created in the first place. And so instead, we needed to be created simple and ignorant, and then grow into loving, compassionate, kind uh, souls through our own choices. We needed to freely choose that.
Mhm.
And it was very important that it be done that way. And God basically explained that he had developed a way for us souls to mature very quickly. Uh, Basically, he said it would be very brief, and then we could enjoy our existence forever. It was kind of like that. And I said, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. And he asked, okay, are you willing to go through this difficult experience? It's going to be very brief, but it's going to be very difficult. Are you willing to go through it? And basically, I said, okay, sure. Here's me. I was extremely ignorant. I didn't know anything about anything, and this very loving, very powerful being who's extremely confident about this plan presents it to me, and so I agreed to it. And after I agreed to it, God was very pleased, and he said, "Would you like to see my face?" Um, and when I say he, I'm just saying he because that's the only pronoun that kind of works. It wasn't like he was a male or female. It wasn't like that. It's just that's the only
There's no
pronoun that
gender.
works.
There's
Yeah,
no
there was
gender.
no gender. It wasn't like that. But I say he just because there's not a better pronoun for it. Anyway, um, God asked if I wanted to see his face, and I said, okay, I guess so, sure. And my attention was turned. I had been looking at all these other souls that I had been with, and my attention was turned and I saw a giant. It looked like a giant sun, and but inside the sun were like millions and millions and millions of other souls, kind of like me, the little balls of light. And a couple of them kind of like came to the surface to see me. And when they did that, I could see their faces clearly, and they were extremely happy. And it was kind of like taking their attention off of God to welcome me. It's kind of like it lessened their happiness a little bit. They went from being, this happy to being this happy. So it was kind of like a hardship for them just to come welcome me because it reduced their happiness a little bit. Anyway, but either way, they were extremely, extremely happy. I couldn't even explain what it was like for them. But they welcomed me to existence. They said, again, this is telepathic communication. That they said, when you're ready, you're going to join us. They were very happy that I was coming into existence because when I joined them, it's like it would increase their happiness a little bit. Like I was unique and irreplaceable, as was everyone else. And when I joined them in this, I guess with God, I would contribute something that no one else could contribute, and it would increase their happiness a little bit. And so they were excited about that. But they assured me that eventually I would join them, and that they were looking forward to that. And with that, God said, "Okay, are you sure you're ready to begin this adventure?" And I agreed. And it's like that. With that, I was zooming away from this place or this realm or whatever it was at a tremendous speed. And God was still communicating with me telepathically, and we started looking at a whole bunch of different planets I could go to. And it seemed like there was countless planets. I don't know how many there are, but it seemed like there was a whole bunch. And I don't remember the details about them, but I just remember that there was a whole bunch of them, and we were looking at, I guess, thousands and thousands of different places I could go. And then we arrived at Earth, and there was something about this planet or this life or being a human. I don't know, but there was something about it. I was like, this is where I want to go. This is perfect. This is what the experience I want. This place. And I was absolutely sure about it. Something about this place really fit me. And God asked me, "Okay, are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sure." And when I gave that second confirmation that yes, this is what I want, then it's like the decision was finalized. And with that, my memory was over, and I was back to floating in my neighbor's backyard. And I had more questions. I wanted to know, okay, I understand how I got to Earth, why I'm on this place, and where I came from, but uh, why am I Aaron Green? Like, why am I this person? How did that happen? And so again, it was like a memory, something I had been through previously. It like replayed for me, and so it answered my question. But the memory started out, okay, so that first experience I described was before I had ever come to Earth. Okay. The second experience, what I'm describing now, this is before became Aaron Green. When it started, it was obvious that I had been to Earth many times before. Like it wasn't my first life. And it seems like I screwed up a previous life. Like I had made a bunch of mistakes and I'd done something wrong. And I felt really bad about that. And um, if you do something in life and you feel bad about it, the way I felt during this experience, it was significantly worse than any kind of regret or bad feeling that you can have in life. Like it was a much more real feeling. Anyway, I felt bad about what I had done. I had screwed up, and there was some guides that were trying to help me. And basically, they said, we want you to go back. And I said, "Go back where?" And they said, "Back to Earth." And I was like, "No, I'm not going back to Earth. I'm not." And not only did I say that, I said, "I'm not going back to Earth, and you can't make me." And they said, "You're right. We can't make you go back to Earth." But uh, essentially, my plan was to just stay there where I was forever. And
And
they,
how would that affect you if you didn't come back? Do you know? Or you could answer at the end
yeah,
of this
yeah, I'll go
story.
ahead and cover that. So, um, if I didn't come back to Earth, I would have been stuck in that state essentially forever. I wouldn't have been able to change. It's like when we come to Earth, we're able to change ourselves in a way that we can't do in the spiritual realms. There's greater freedom and there's more intensity to the spiritual realms, but it's really hard to change. In the physical here in this physical world, it's like you can change pretty easily, but it's way less intense, and we don't have the same kind of freedom that we have in the spiritual realms. Um, but I would have just stayed in that state forever. And it was my guides were basically pointing out, this would be a waste. This is not how you're meant to be. This is not a pleasant uh, way to exist. We want to send you back to Earth so that you can improve, you can get better, you can get happier. You're not just stuck like this. Um, but I didn't want to come back. And essentially they said, well, how about if we show you some of the souls you could help if you do go back? Would you let us do that? And I said, okay, I guess you could do that. And so they showed me some souls, and they said essentially, if you go back, you would help these souls. And so I that kind of triggered something in me, and I thought, okay, maybe I would consider this because I really like the idea of helping these other souls. It really appealed to me. And so my guide said, okay, could we show you a life that you could live? And I said, well, okay, we can take a look. And so they showed me this life that I could live. And I would I would have been born into kind of a what I think is like an abusive household where they would have mistreated this person,
Oh,
and they would have grown up to be very angry.
oh,
And you might wonder, well, why would you want to be an angry person? And essentially, if I took that life, then spiritually, then my entire life I would be working against that anger. Okay. And spiritually, it would have the effect of it would make me like more patient, more peaceful. Um, life is kind of like going to the gym and lifting weights, and you're working on something. And for me, that life would have been working on being more peaceful, more calm, not giving in to anger all the time, and that's what that life would have been. But I completely rejected it. I said, no, I'm not doing that. There's no way I'm doing this life. It's not what I want. And my guides respected that, and they said, okay, well, let's look at some other options. And so we looked at a set of parents and that I could have if I came to Earth. And we took a close look at them. And it's safe to say they had no secrets. Here on Earth, we think we have secrets, but in the spiritual realm, everything's an open book. Nobody has anything hidden. Okay, that's just not how it works. But I could look at these parents and I knew everything, basically everything about them, where they were on their spiritual journey, what their finances looked like, what kind of parents they would be. It was an open book, okay? And I knew that I would have an older brother if I took this family. But there was things about these parents I really liked. I thought maybe they would be a good fit. So we started looking at, well, what kind of body could I have if I chose these parents? And we started looking at the options. And I saw pretty quickly that one of the options was red hair. And I really like the idea of having red hair and being a redheaded girl. And the reason I like the red hair is because it was kind of rare. It's not a common hair type. And then I wanted to be a girl because I was really afraid that I would hurt other people if I came back to Earth. Like I think in a previous life I'd been like a violent person, maybe. I don't know. But somehow I wanted to be a girl because I felt like they were less likely to hurt others. But we started looking at that, and there weren't like a lot of genetics for the red hair, so my options were very limited. I wouldn't have like I couldn't quite get exactly what I wanted. I would have ended up being an awkward person, kind of socially different, and I would have had trouble making friends, and I never would have been able to get married if I picked a girl with red hair. So I thought, okay, well, let's look at the boys. What kind of options are available for those? And there just weren't enough options for red hair for a boy to get all the other attributes I might want. And you might wonder, well, why do you care what your hair color is or what you look like? It affects the way you interact with other people. It affects how people treat you. It ends up mattering. It affects the entire experience you're going to have. Anyway, but it quickly became obvious that the dominant genes for these parents, the dominant trait was a brown-haired boy. And so we started looking at, okay, well, what kind of options are available there? And I explained this, and it takes me kind of a long time to explain this, but in the process, it was very quick. Okay, it happened very fast. But started looking at brown-haired boys, and I thought, okay, well, I want to be really good looking. Okay, I want to be like the best looking person on the planet, like extremely good looking, and that those genes were available to these parents. And my guides basically said, okay, hang on a second, you can make that choice if you want, but if you do, uh, you're going to, you're going to be kind of arrogant. You're going to, basically, you're going to be too promiscuous. Women will treat you differently, and it's going to affect the way you live your life, and you'll be too promiscuous. And it was inherently obvious that there was a downside to that in the spiritual realms. Um, and basically, my guides pointed out, hey, there's downsides to this, and it was very obvious that yes, there was downsides for me personally to be extremely good looking, and where I was in my spiritual development. So we lowered the attractiveness down to still, a little bit attractive, but not. No one's putting me on a magazine cover or anything like that. I know I'm 50 and I don't. I'm looking a little older, but as a younger person, my looks matched what I remember picking. A little bit good looking. And then we started looking at intelligence, and I wanted to be like the smartest guy on the planet. Just brilliant, like Albert Einstein kind of stuff. And that was available to these parents. I could have made that choice. And my guides pointed out, okay, hang on a second. If you make that choice, you're going to have trouble relating to other people. You're going to be arrogant. You're going to look down on others. And and this would make you end up being an atheist. And I understood what they were saying, and they were right. And so we again we backed the intelligence down to intelligent, but nothing extraordinary. No Albert Einstein or anything like that. And then we looked at how tall I would be, eye color, everything about this body, down to the most intimate detail. We looked at it, and we looked at how it would affect my life, how it would affect my relationships, and eventually we picked, or I picked with my guides, with their advice, what I thought was the right body. And it's like, okay, this looks like the right body. And then my guides pointed out something. They said, okay, with all these choices you've made, um, the genes you've picked, there's an unintended consequence. This body will have really bad acne as a teenager. You'll have a whole lot of pimples. And so we took a look at that, what that would be like. And it was obvious that there would be a couple years as a teenager where I would have really bad acne. And this was not like intentional, it was like a side effect of the other choices we had made. But it was bad enough that my guides needed to present it to me to get my approval. Otherwise, we couldn't go through with it. But I looked at that, and essentially, it was going to be a difficult experience, but it was actually going to be helpful for my spiritual development. Somehow, going through that would help me grow, become. I don't know. It was somehow the exact phrase I remember is it's going to help me on my mission. Like it would help me somehow to go through that hardship of having really bad acne for a couple years. And then what really stands out to me is this 2 years or whatever it was of really bad acne. From a spiritual perspective, it seemed so short. I can't even describe how short 2 years of difficulty seemed from a spiritual perspective. Like it seemed almost trivial, like nothing. So anyway, mainly because it would actually help me spiritually, I agreed to have this bad acne so I could make the rest of the body work. And so then my guides, they had some plans for me. They basically said, okay, they showed me things I had done in a previous life and how that would affect this life. And so they showed me a number of different things I had done in a previous life, and some of the mistakes I had made, and some of the good things I had done. They directly played into what this life was going to be like. What I had done in the past affected the choices I had about the parents I could have, where I could be born, how comfortable my life was going to be, all sorts of things. But some of the mistakes I made in the past, they now were coming back into this life, and it was a learning opportunity for me. I was going to receive some of the stuff I had done in previous lives, and the most straightforward example that I have is they showed me in a previous life I'd been kind of a big, strong guy, and I beat up this other guy. It was a fight I easily could have avoided, um, and I was basically in the wrong. There was no reason I needed to fight this guy, but I beat him up really good. And they showed me that at the time in this previous life, like I had been happy about it. Like I felt like, good, I beat him up, he deserved it kind of thing. But they showed me the full picture, and it was obvious that he didn't deserve it, and I was clearly in the wrong. And they showed me all this. And as my learning opportunity, they were going to basically I was going to get my nose broken as a teenager, but they needed my agreement in order to make that part of the life plan. And it was necessary for me to continue my spiritual evolution to kind of like learn my lesson. And so I agreed to it. And then they showed me other things I had done in the previous life. Some of them are too personal to get into, but it's clear that I have made mistakes in past lives, and some of those mistakes were now being directly integrated into what I would experience in this life. Um, but they needed me to agree to all this. And so I agreed because I knew that it's like some of the stuff I had done in the past, it's like it was holding me back. It was preventing me from greater happiness in the spiritual realms. And by going through but by receiving what I had previously given out, it's like it liberated me, it freed me from that baggage and allowed me to move to higher spiritual levels. So I agreed to various things like that. Um, and then they had arrangements like friendships worked out for me and some other people, and they wanted me to agree to certain like relationships I would have with other people. Uh, and my coworkers really stand out the most. People I work with now, I've been at the same job for I think 26 years, and a lot of the people at my job, I remember them from this life planning. Like our relationships, some of them are planned out. And one guy really stands out. He had been a friend of mine in a previous life. We had been good friends, and then in this life, we were going to kind of like disagree and kind of rub each other the wrong way. Like he didn't really like me, I didn't really like him, but we were going to have to work with each other for years. And you might think, well, why on earth would you want that? Well, by having to work a little bit harder to be nice to him, for us to work together, it's like that provides a spiritual growth because you have to work a little bit harder to be kind, to be respectful, to not argue with this person. And so it would actually help both of us with our spiritual development. But there was all kinds of little relationship things like that, and more significant ones. And there was, events that were planned between me and other people. There was a whole lot of planning that went into this, and they needed my approval for any kind of difficulty that I was supposed to go through. They couldn't just force it on me. They needed my approval. Anyway, so I agreed to all kinds of stuff like that, and they assured me that even though I had agreed to this plan, when I came to Earth, when I lived this life, I would still have free will. I would be able to make changes to the plan as life went on. Uh, so so when we were done planning that part out, they showed me my entire life in its entirety. All these different decisions, how it would look like, what sort of options I would have, some of the different paths I could take in life. We took a more holistic look at the whole thing, and they said, "Are you sure you're willing to go through with this?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sure. I'm willing to go through with this." And it's like with that, the decision was made, and it's like I was off to live this life. That answered that question I had had, and I was back to floating in my neighbor's backyard, just kind of floating around aimlessly. And I had one more big question. It was like I basically said, okay, I know I know where I come from. I know how I became Aaron, but where was I between all these different lives? It was obvious I had lived many lives, but what was I doing between lives? Like what was I doing in the spiritual realms? And so again, I was like shown stuff I had previously experienced, had been through, but I'd forgotten as I became this person. And I saw that I had been in a number of different spiritual realms between lives. I'll start with the worst and move to the best. At one point, um, I'd been in some horrible realm where everyone there they just fought with each other constantly, and I
Wow.
was one of them. I was one of these. We all kind of looked like monsters.
Oh,
Uh,
this is between the lives.
this is between lives, yes.
Yeah.
And the way it works is pretty clear. When we live life, we develop a certain internal nature. Are we loving? Are we kind? Are we nice to others? Or uh, are we mean to others? Do we want to hurt other people? Do we want to steal from other people? Whatever sort of internal characteristics we develop during life, when we die, it's like those internal characteristics come out, and that's who we are, and it affects the way we look. Also, our looks in the spiritual realm are directly related to our internal thoughts. Here on earth, we look however we look. It's not related to how good of a person you are, but in the spiritual realm, it's not like that. We look like how we are internally. And so anyway, I looked like some kind of monster, okay? Um,
Wow.
I was dark. I had a thick exoskeleton skeleton, like a hard outer shell, and I had instead of arms, I had like claws, and I was
Oh,
just fighting with these other beings who looked exactly like me. And I guess all of us had been violent people, perhaps, and all we
oh,
did was just fight with each other. We didn't remember the past, and we had no hope for a different future. We were just miserable, and we hated each other, and that was
mm,
just how our existence was. But after fighting for a while, um, I saw that something in me changed and I didn't want to fight with them anymore. I stopped fighting and I actually tried to help one of these other uh, monsters that I was with. And when I tried to help this other entity or person or soul or whatever it was, um, a being of light swooped in from above and pulled me out of this violent mess. And I asked, "Why did you pull me out? What happened? I was trying to help this guy or help this soul." And this being of light told me, "When you stopped fighting with others and you tried to help them, you don't belong here anymore, and that's why I
mm,
pulled you out." And he also went on to tell me all of these souls that are down here fighting, every one of them eventually is going to leave. Nobody's going to be stuck like that forever. And basically, he had a way for me to transition and become a better soul. I think that began the process for beginning a different life. I saw another realm I had been in where I was just kind of standing around in the dark with a bunch of other souls. We were all very confused. It was completely dark. We had no idea what was going on. I think I had been atheist in the life before that, and that
uh-huh,
was in darkness. I kind
uh,
of think that's what was going on, but I don't know. Anyway, there was beings of light going around, like higher level souls that were trying to help us, and I was very hesitant to accept their help. We were all me and the other souls in the darkness, uh, we were kind of self-centered. We weren't really out to help other people. And so
mm,
the thought that these beings were there to help us was kind of like a foreign concept. So we had a lot of trouble accepting their help. But eventually uh, I accepted the help of one of these beings. And as I understand it, they then transitioned me to a different life. In another one of these dark realms, there had been buildings kind of like on Earth, but they were like ugly and decrepit. It didn't look right, and everybody there was kind of unhappy. And again, there was like a being of light going around offering to help the souls that were there, but they couldn't force that help on you. You needed to agree to it. And one of them convinced me, and I accepted his help, so I was able to leave that realm. But then I also saw that I'd been in some happy realms. One of them was it looked kind of like Earth. It had buildings, it had streets. I even remember a lamppost very clearly. It had ornate details. And the souls there, they were all very happy. They were doing the same kind of stuff they had done in life, but now they were in this much happier version of like an earthly life. And when I was there, it's like I very quickly recognized that this is like a midway level. And so I left very quickly because I wanted to continue to move up. Um, and then I had been in another realm that was like a city of light. Um, like all the buildings were translucent but made of light. You could see through them, and the souls there, like you could see them and see through them too. It was very beautiful, and I couldn't even begin to describe the happiness of the souls there. Just extremely happy. Um, and with that, I saw I had a pretty good idea what happened to me between some of these different lives and what kind of realms people end up in. And I was back to just floating around my neighbor's backyard. And
wow.
I had a realization, okay, when I leave this life, I'm going to be able to transition back to one of these happy realms. And I was so excited about that. I was so happy. I wanted to go right away to one of these happy realms and be done with life. And it was like as soon as I had that realization, this being of light or an angel, that nobody wears a name tag, so I'm just assuming it
Yeah.
thing was an angel. I don't know. This being was absolutely beautiful. Um, and let me describe a little bit about that beauty. He was translucent. He was like made of light. His facial features were absolutely beautiful, but because he's translucent, it's like you can see into this being and you can see like there's like an internal beauty to them that I couldn't begin to describe. There's like a deeper intimacy because you can see into them and see really who they are at a much deeper level. And it might sound confusing here as humans, but in the spiritual realms, it's very easy and very clear to see someone and see their beauty, not just externally, but also internally. Anyway, he was very powerful and like a much higher level than me. And he told me, "You are not to leave your body." And it's like just like that, bam! I was back in my body, and I felt like I had been rebuked. It felt kind of like I had bent the rules to leave my body. Like my breathing problem, maybe it shouldn't have triggered my soul to leave my body. I'm not exactly sure, but I went home, tried to explain it to my mom, but as a little kid, I just could not verbalize what had happened to me. I couldn't
Hmm.
explain it.
How
And
scary not to be able to breathe, but what a great gift to be given this experience.
right, absolutely. And then so I thought about this experience every day for maybe 6 months, something like that. And then one day I was just kind of walking through my house and I was contacted by my guides mentally, like mind-to-mind communication. I knew exactly who it was. It was, it's like a fingerprint. Like I knew exactly who it was. Anyway, they told me that what I had been through, what I experienced, it was interfering with my life, and they wanted to hide that memory from me. They told me that I could never develop faith with the knowledge I had, and knowing this stuff, it was interfering with my life. So they wanted me to agree to hide this memory, and they basically said, um, we want you to have this knowledge, but we need to change your life plan so that you're properly prepared to handle this information. Um, and I was unhappy about that because it meant my life was going to be more difficult. But I knew my guides were right and I accepted their plan. So they made changes to what was planned for my life to give me additional uh, growth opportunities. I don't know what you want to call it. It basically would prepare me to handle what I had learned in this experience I had. And also, it would allow me to develop faith. There's something about faith that's very valuable in the spiritual realm. And because I had seen all this stuff, like I knew about the spiritual realm, so I couldn't really develop faith since I had that kind of knowledge. But if they hid it from me, I would be able to then develop faith. And so I agreed to what they said they wanted. I didn't think about my experience anymore. I grew up as a teenager. I had my nose broken.
Oh
Uh,
God.
I didn't remember at all that I had planned that out beforehand. Some of the other stuff that my guides had planned for my life had happened without any knowledge on my part that this is something that planned. I got married, had kids, and then when I was I think 36 or 37, I was reading a Newsweek magazine article about Dr. Eben Alexander, and he's a neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience. Anyway, I like accepted his experience. Like I believed him. I believed what he was saying, and I had more, I guess, faith in God than I had previously. Like it hit me on a different level, and somehow that triggered all these all that knowledge of this experience to come back to me.